Good morning. Welcome to another show with a guy and his projects. Today we are working on this Ford F150 2001, correct?
2002.
2002 F150. We are replacing the alternator, a typical task you may have to do. It's a lot easier than you might think. So stay tuned. We're going to show you how. Alright, first things first, disconnect the negative terminal off of the battery to keep yourself alive. Anytime you're working on car electrical, it is a good idea to protect both yourself and the equipment by disconnecting the negative terminal. Not only disconnect it, but tuck it away safely or it's not going to accidentally pop loose and make connection again. Second off, your air intake. Yours might look different. This is aftermarket. Either way, you're going to get rid of all this ductwork right here. You're just going to undo the hose clamps, undo your electrical, boop, and your other hose clamps. Pop them off, 1 and 2, and then grab the whole entire thing and you can kind of wiggle it out of the box and then wiggle it out of the actual intake. And toss it aside, grab a 1/2-inch breaker bar and stick it in the tensioner to release tension on the belt. Take the belt off of the alternator, leave it on the other pulleys. This bolt right here holding the alternator on the bottom left when you're looking at the engine, do not take it all the way out, just loosen it about 5 or 6 threads. Same with the one on the right when you're looking at the engine. We ended up taking them all the way out because we are doofuses and did not realize what we were doing, but you do not need to go through all that work. It's a lot of threads for no reason. I will show you why near the end of the video. There is one bolt that you will have to remove completely, however, and that is right here on this bracket. That bolt needs to come all the way out, 10 millimeter by the way. Everything we are doing here is 10 millimeter. So take that bolt all the way out. It's that one right there on the right that's halfway removed so far. And once that is out, that's what that looks like in case you've never seen one before. You're then going to take the alternator, flip it up on the pulley and rest it down. You have 3 electrical connections, one on the right, one in the middle, one on the left, believe it or not. The one on the right, go ahead and just wiggle loose. Ford put these in backwards for whatever flippity-floppity reason they decided to do that. It's a pain in the butt, but a little patience and some elbow grease, you can just rip it off essentially. The little tiny one, you can't really get a finger in there either because, you know, whatever, brilliant design. So we used a little tiny flathead screwdriver, pried up and pulled back. The third one is actually practical and easy, and it is bolted in with a nut and bolt type situation, also 10 millimeters. So you're just going to peel back the rubber protective coating and break it loose. Might be a little bit tight, but I have faith you can do it. And just spin that off. Once you get that off, take the eyelet off and your alternator is now free. Just wiggle it loose. A little quick dad joke over here. Do you know why Apple will never get into the car business? Because they don't like Windows. Ha ha, that's a knee slapper. Anywho, take your alternator out. That's your old one. Careful, it might be hot if you did this fresh after a drive. Take your new one, stick it in upside down as well with the pulley going down. This is to access the electrical just like when you took it out. So just fish it around your upper radiator hose, your cables, and get it in there. It looks super simple on the video. Trust me, it's more difficult than it looks. So you're going to set it down in there, turn it up, and you're going to plug your electrical back in. A lot easier than taking it out. Just slide it on in. Once you hear it clip, you know you're good. Same with your other one. And the one that is bolted in, take the fresh nut off, stick your eyelet on, and put that bolt back on. Nut, whatever it is. I do not know the torque specs. Just tighten it until it's tight. You know how tight. It's that, you know, you just get that feeling right before it snaps off. Try not to snap it off. Alright, at this point, if you did not take those lower bolts out, you will be thankful. We did, so this was a little bit more difficult to put the bolts back in because you have to hold up the alternator and aim it and keep it straight and all this other stuff. Not a big deal. Don't sweat it. But it was more difficult than it should have been. Not to say it was super difficult, but you know what I mean. So take your ratchet and just snug up that top one. If you did not remove the bottom ones, just snug them up at this point. If you did, now you got to fish them in through to the holes and line it up in the whatchamacallit thingy-majiggy. Not a big deal. Just got to do it. That's all. And this is why you see that little U shape right there. So technically, you should have been able to just set the alternator on top of the bolts, which were only loosened by a few threads. Put their belt back on top of the alternator pulley. Use your breaker bar to release the tension on the tensioner. And just check and make sure that your belt didn't fall off any of your other pulleys. Have them all set up. Make sure the belt is lined up, the correct grooves on the correct teeth on the pulleys, and such on and so forth. Pretty self-explanatory when you're doing it in person. Once you have it all lined up on everything, you can go ahead and just pull out your breaker bar or serpentine belt tool, whatever you happen to have. In either way, whatever you happen to have, either way, it's a 1/2 inch. At this point, we are very close to being done. Just put your ductwork back together for your intake. Same deal. Instead of loosening, now you're going righty-tighty and just tighten everything up until it feels about right. You'll know that feeling when you get there. If you go too far, you'll know that feeling too. And you're just going to take your other little hoses here, slap them on, boom. This is a good time to replace them, you know, if they're all dry rotted and cracked. Put your electrical back together. And voila. At this point, you are so close to being done that, you know, you're almost there. Tighten up your battery, put your terminal back on, your cables, whatever the heck they're called. I don't know why I can't think of anything right now, but that's it, guys. Alright, so changing the alternator is super easy to do on this vehicle. Easy enough for you if you don't work on your vehicles, but you want to change it and you're kind of scared to get into it because you got to take stuff apart. Remember, it's easier than it looks, and it looked pretty easy, I hope. Just a few hose clamps. Take the intake tube off, not a big deal, just a couple hose clamps on that. And that's really it. A couple bolts, you're good to go. So if you liked what you saw, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you can see more. And we'll see you next time.